hate. I don't even know what to say anymore. What's going on in America? We're fighting hate. We're fighting these divisions. We can't even sit together as a family around the dinner table. Some of us or some family members haven't talked at all, just because of what's happened politically. And we're also seeing a rise of anti-Semitism in our nation that we have not seen in years. Something that's so shocking. I mean, this is 2020. We don't even know what's going on here. I believe in telling the truth. I believe in searching for that truth and getting it out to the American public. And part of that is investigating these stories that have really changed our nation. I've teamed up with Liora Rez at stopantisemitism.org and my nonprofit, which I founded, thedarkwire.com. That's thedarkwire.com. It's a foundation to teach young journalists how to investigate, how to write stories, to make the projects their own, whether that's documentary film work or working in miss the old days of the paper, hold the presses, when we had a story that was breaking, that was, something that we were working on. Now it's the internet, it's social media platforms, it's get it as fast as you can. And a lot of stuff out there is erroneous and false and wrong. And we've also seen the rise of partisanship in media like we've never seen before. Part of the reason why I started the Dark Wire Foundation is to bring back some of that old-fashioned journalism, but to really give ownership to young people so that they understand the importance of being a voice for the voiceless, that they're not afraid to stand up and report the truth. And that's why I basically pulled together this foundation several years ago. We did a documentary called Not in Vain. That's VEIN, Not in Vain. And it was so important to us because we got the stories out that were associated with the rise of the opioid epidemic in the United States. Now the foundation is going to be focusing on anti-Semitism, the rise of anti-Semitism in the U.S., groups like BDS. I know you've heard about them quite often. Groups inside the United States like the Black Hebrew Israelites, or the anti-Semitism we've heard coming from congressional members like Rashida Tlaib and congressional representative Ilhan Omar and others who have been out there speaking out against the state of Israel, but as well against the Jewish people. Remember Ilhan Omar? It's all about the Benjamins, baby. Remember that tweet? And the fact that so many people have failed to hold these members responsible for the things that they say and for the people that they support. These are people in our government. These are people in the House of Representatives. They represent the United States. Think about if it was one of us, right? Think about if it was one of us. But before I go any further, I want to talk to you about an organization that I absolutely believe in, and that is AMAC. Would you pay your hard-earned money to join an organization that fought tooth and nail for a government-run healthcare system? No way. How about an organization that scripted portions of White House speeches behind closed doors to ensure the passage of the Affordable Care Act? Or an organization that stood against tax cuts for the middle-class Americans and small business owners? Would you join an organization like that? No. Then don't join AARP. Don't join them. Join AMAC, guys. AMAC, it's a conservative alternative. Instead, AMAC offers an alternative to just about every benefit that AARP offers. But without the liberal agenda, trust me, become an AMAC member right now with a 1-year free membership. Just go to amac.us/Carter. That's amac.us/Carter to get your membership. Wouldn't you rather belong to that organization that actually fights for your values? There's a ton of work to be done, and AMAC is asking that you help them fight the good fight by becoming a member today. The benefits are great, but the cause is even greater. I stand with AMAC, and I hope you will too. I encourage you to join amac.us/Carter. That's amac.us/Carter. It's a great organization. That's all about what I do here at the Sara Carter show on the podcast is even when it comes to the ads, it's all about putting our nation first and putting our families and our local governments and our system first. And what we're learning is right now is that so much of it's going behind us, right? We're not moving forward. We're looking at different issues that we're dealing with. Like, for example, I talked about the rise in anti-Semitism. It's important that we focus on that. Why? Because it's anti-American. And we're seeing the left kind of create this synergy with groups that are really anti-Semitic. And I'm going to have Liora Rez on to talk about that. She has a foundation called StopAntisemitism.org. I mean, she's the target of hate, really. People have targeted her on the left, and she has put up with so much to get the truth out. And I feel, like she is one of the true warriors, one of the true heroines in this battle against hate, and one of the few people that's willing to basically speak out and tell the truth. She's called out Representative Ilhan Omar. She's called out Rashida Tlaib. She doesn't allow them to perpetuate that type of hate. And they hide it. They kind of blend it in. They try to call out Israel. They make young people feel like the Israeli government. They talk about Zionism, right? And they talk about these issues in a sense to try to turn young people against the state of Israel under the guise that they're doing the right thing, but they're not. What happens is there's a rise of hatred. It's not just about Israel. They use the Israeli state to cover it up, but they turn it against the Jewish people. And that's why we've seen a number of attacks in New York City and across the United States, in the synagogues, the rise of hate on the internet. The FBI just released a report showing that 60% of the religious hate crimes in the United States in 2019 were against the Jewish people. Something is drastically wrong in our nation. And we're seeing it in our universities and our college system. What are they teaching our children? That's why this issue is so important to me. I have right here, and I mean, our campaign is going to be huge. I'm telling you, we have people coming on board. And like I said, it's open to everyone. I've talked about this on a number of radio shows since the campaign started, the campaign against hate. We're opening it up. We want Muslim mothers, Jewish mothers, Christian mothers, Buddhist mothers, whoever you are. We want you to be a part of this. And fathers, we want you to stand up against hate, but we got to tell the truth. We can't let people hide under the guise of being PC. We can't be afraid to call out people like Ilhan Omar or Rashida Tlaib. Just because they're Muslim, that is not an excuse, right? We're not going to be afraid to tell the truth here. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about us joining together and finding a way to talk to one another to stop this. I've been going through a lot of the, various stories, and I actually right here, if for those of you who are hearing this paper but are not watching me on YouTube or Rumble, I'm actually going to be reading something here. It's the AARP definition of anti-Semitism. Jenny actually published this and put it out for me so I could read it to you all. I want to talk about it because I think it's important that we understand what anti-Semitism is. Before I bring Liora on, I just kind of want to read through that for you. And in this AARP, this working definition states that with humanity still scarred by anti-Semitism and xenophobia, the international community shares a solemn responsibility to fight those evils. The Committee on Anti-Semitism and Holocaust Denial, called the AARP Plenary in Budapest, this was in 2015, adopted the following working definition of anti-Semitism. 1, calling for, aiding, or justifying the killing or harming of Jews in the name of a radical ideology or an extremist view of religion. 2, making mendacious, dehumanizing, demonizing, or stereotypical allegations about Jews as such, or the power of Jews as a collective, such as, especially but not exclusively, the myth about a world Jewish conspiracy, or of Jews controlling the media, economy, government, or other societal institutions. Haven't we heard about that? Haven't we seen that? It's all about the Benjamins, baby. Remember that with Ilhan Omar. Remember that she said that. And remember the fact that the Democrats rarely hold her accountable or others accountable for those type of tropes that they use against the Jewish people. Accusing Jews as a people of being responsible for real imagined wrongdoing committed by a single Jewish person or group, or even for acts committed by non-Jews, denying the facts, scope, and mechanisms of intentionally of genocide of the Jewish people at the hands of nationalist socialist Germany and its supporters and accomplices during World War II. How many Holocaust denials have we heard? How much have we seen out there on the internet? I mean, the spread of Holocaust denial is incredible. In the United States, there are so many young people that actually believe this, that actually believe the Holocaust never happened. Spreading of hate. And by the way, you can find this all online and you should share it with your children. IHRA. I'm not Jewish. I'm Christian. But my Jewish friends and my Jewish allies, right? And our Israeli allies, we rely on each other to get the truth out. And that's what's important here. And that's the reason why we have this campaign against hate. Because we don't want to see America devolve anymore. Because we don't want to go back. Because we've learned from history. And it never ends with the Jews, right? It always starts with the Jews. You're always hearing about this. It never ends with the Jews. It goes further and further and further. And it just seeps into the society. Remember what happened in Nazi Germany. It started with the Jews, but it didn't end with the Jews. And we have to remember that here in the United States. And that's why we're seeing all of this false information on the web, on social media, and especially with COVID, because so many people are locked down that, I mean, there's various groups out there, but they're utilizing the media and they're utilizing these platforms to basically propagate hate. And that's something that we are actually trying to stop, which is the reason why the Dark Wire has this campaign against hate. It's our campaign against hate. And that's why we've partnered with StopAntisemitism.org with Liora Rez. And I think it's really important that, that we get more and more people involved in this. And, Liora is the director of her organization. It's an American watchdog group. It basically monitors and exposes hatred against the Jewish people. The organization, it actually co-published The New Anti-Semites. You have to read this report. It's a groundbreaking report revealing the pervasiveness of anti-Semitism in the United States. I think it'll blow your mind when you read it. When you go to her website and read this report, you will actually be stunned at what's happening right here in the United States. Many of you don't even realize what your children are being taught in schools, what they're learning on the internet. I think you will be shocked when you do go into that report. The report exposes contemporary forms of anti-Semitism. It's actually by the BDS movement, which is Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions movement in the United States. This group has been normalized by the left and by congressional members. And it is a group that has now been designated by Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and the United States government as an anti-Semitic group. But remember, this group was being normalized for so long. And there's so many young people that are connected to this group and that support this group. And your children may be online learning this group's hatred and actually believing that it's okay and normal. So you got to check this out. This is the reason why I've partnered with Liora, so we can get the message out to parents so that they understand what's happening online with their children, especially during this time. And especially when we've seen over the last year, the majority of our kids locked down and just stuck inside a computer, right? A lot of times we can't monitor everything that they're doing. Anyways, before we get to Liora, I want to talk to you about a new product that I'm really excited about. It's called heat holders. I mean, this is an incredible line of products. I'm really excited about winter. I love going out in the snow and I love skiing, love spending time with my family. And heat holders is an amazing array of products. They've got gloves, hats, socks. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you. They also have a great throw. And you don't need to have these little heat blocks, right? You know, those that try to keep your hands warm in the winter, but they only last a few minutes. You put them in your pocket and try to keep yourself warm. Heat holders is actually the material itself. It's like built in and it keeps you warm, keeps your family warm. I mean, you can cover the whole family with gifts if you go to Heat Holders. I'm telling you, give someone you love heat holders for the holidays, or just treat yourself. Go to heatholders.com and enter the code Carter and check out to save 15% off your order. So if you put in Carter, Carter, Heat Holders will give you 15% off your order. Receive free shipping with any purchase of $25 or more, and you can easily spend that on your family. Trust me. There's no need for icy cold feet this winter. Just go to heatholders.com and use the code Carter. That's heatholders.com. Use the code Carter. Without any further delay, let's go to Liora Rez. Hi, Liora. Thank you so much for being a part of the Sara Carter Show again. And because you and I are working together, I talked about it at the top of the show. You know, our focus is fighting anti-Semitism. We're going to fight it all the way. And you just posted something new on Twitter that I think is very important. I just want to cut to the chase. And it's about the anti-Semite of the week. And it's part of your Stop Anti-Semitism project. And it is Olivia Cotby-Smith. First, tell us a little bit about her, and then let us know why you have named her the Anti-Semite of the Week.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thanks again for having me back on your podcast. I'm always excited to chat with you. So my organization features every week an Anti-Semite of the week, and this week it's Olivia Cotby-Smith. This is a young woman who is now the North American coordinator for the BDS movement, which was just labeled as anti-Semitic by the U.S. Department of State and Mike Pompeo, something that we have known and have been yelling at the top of our lungs now for years. So we had featured her. She has a very troubling past. Some of her hobbies include cheerleading for terrorists like Layla Khalid, who hijacked not one, but two planes.
And she also was a guest speaker, right? At San Francisco University, which is insane.
Yep, San Francisco State University did their damnedest to get her featured. Thankfully, the social media platforms, Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube, Google, were on the right side of history and said, you know what? No, we're not partaking in featuring a terrorist. Again, a two-time convicted terrorist who spent time in prison in the UK for her activities. So San Francisco State University was not too happy about that. But going back to Olivia, so this is a young woman who cheerleads for terrorists like Layla. She fundraises for members of the Palestine Liberation Front, which is an organization deemed as a terrorist entity by the U.S. government. So this is a young woman who had set up, and I'm sorry, I should go back. I don't know if she set it up, but she was endorsing a fundraiser for releasing their Secretary General, who is sitting in an Israeli prison for the 2001 murder of a Jewish man. So we have a U.S. citizen trying to raise money for a terrorist.
By the way, somebody who is supported by congressional members, somebody who is seen frequently in photographs with Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, advocating for BDS. I mean, you said earlier before we got on, we had a little time to talk, that you feel like you're living in an upside down alter universe. Like, this doesn't seem real. I got to tell you, I've been feeling the same way. Tell me a little bit about that, because I mean, I think for all of us, there's so many of us out there wondering what's going on here.
That's what I want to know. Power? What is going on here? I think there's a very uncomfortable thing happening when it comes to anti-Semitism. I think everyone can agree that it's safe and okay to call it out when it stems from the right. I think it's okay when we see it in a swastika form or a Nazi form, a white supremacist form. I think when it stems from the radical left and from people like Olivia, this is when it becomes muddled water. And this is what I'm not understanding. This is a young woman, again, and her supporters, and people like a sitting Congresswoman, Rashida Tlaib, who cheerlead for convicted terrorists. Now, I'm not sure if it's okay in their minds because the victims are Jews. So in their mind, it's part of the struggle that they've somehow maneuvered into this plan of activism. But people like Olivia, people like Rashida Tlaib, people like Ilhan Omar, Linda Sarsour, they have taken their anti-Semitism and they have snuck it into the progressive movement. And unfortunately, these young, gullible social activists are just eating it up.
Well, it's dangerous for America. It's dangerous for who we are as a people. And you're right, they did sneak it in. It kind of has woven itself into the fabric of our university systems, into the radical ideologies that we see online. Both, I mean, good for Google for doing that with San Francisco State University and not becoming a platform for this terrorist who I do not want to mention because I don't think she deserves any more attention than she's already received in her life, right? For her horrors. But still though, it's woven itself into that fabric. And a lot of people think of anti-Semitism or Jew hatred as being something that just comes from white supremacists, like you said, or the KKK, or, these right-wing extremist groups. But we've seen a merger of this really bizarre kind of Islamist extremism with the left that's evolved into this new morphing of Jewish hatred and hate in general, because what they've done is every time somebody disagrees with them, even though they are the anti-Semites, right? They turn it on anybody else they can just immediately accuse somebody from the right of being either a racist, against the Arab world, or a Nazi, or a Muslim. You're anti-Muslim, you're a Nazi, you're this, you're that. They don't care. And Google lets them do that. I'm sorry, but I've seen it on Google. I've seen it on Twitter. I've seen the same type of behavior all across social media platforms. I guess what I want to know from you is, based on all your research, this is why I think it's so important that you and I speak out against this. Based on all your research, how do you think this has happened? How has this become the acceptable norm?
So I think, as I stated previously, or just a few minutes ago, anti-Semites have snuck into the progressive movement and they were not called out. I think, for instance, if we looked at the Women's March, there was such a need for, the unification of, let's say, women with, in regards to workspace equality and closing the wage gap and the Me Too movement. And I, for one, am 100% in support of that. What I'm not in support are the four bigots that were shoved in the forefront of the movement that took women like myself and said to me, I'm the Nazi, I'm the racist, I'm part of, a colonial occupier, even though I'm not an Israeli citizen, but as an American Jew, I support Israel. So I'm shoved out of this movement. And there were so many Jewish women like myself and so many non-Jewish women like you that said, wait a minute, why are you vilifying a Jewish woman for a country's action 2,000, 3,000 miles away? It doesn't make sense.
Right.
So they successfully grasped this movement. Thankfully, they were booted out. And I don't know what happened to the Women's March and their group. They seem to have somehow gone away, but they have done so much damage. And I don't know if it can be turned around, but the type of hatred that we're seeing from this alliance that you just spoke about is really, really troubling. And these young minds that are just getting infected with it is very, very frightening. And it's seeping its way onto colleges, one after another after another. Sure, it's Columbia, NYU, Berkeley, San Francisco State, even UCLA, USD. But now we're seeing in middle America, we have instances, for instance, Olivia Cotby-Smith that you just brought up. Guess where she used to teach? She used to teach in Ohio, I believe, at Ohio State University, one of the most heavily Jewish populated colleges and a super Zionistic campus. She taught there. So it's spreading everywhere like wildfire.
Well, it's like an infection. And I've always been stunned with like what some on the left can get away with, because I would think like anybody else who would make statements like Congresswoman Ilhan Omar has made. Remember when it's all about the Benjamins, baby? She was referring to Jewish people. She's a complete anti-Semite. She's been very vocal about that. Rashida Tlaib as well. In fact, let me play a clip right now. If you could play that, Rich, of Ilhan Omar. I want to get your take on this, Liora.
Something happened again at a forum in DC where you said, quote, "I want to talk about the political influence in this country that says it is okay for people to push for allegiance to a foreign country," end quote. That was also criticized as playing into stereotypes about divided loyalties about Jewish people. You did not apologize for that. Do you want to explain?
Yeah, I was not talking about Jewish people. And that, for me, is why I did not apologize. What I was talking about was myself and the pressure that I was feeling towards me to take a certain political stance. And for people to say, you know, if you do not take that particular political stance, then you're not American enough, you're not a patriot. I will make, and I mean, you could go through any of my social media posts, people will like respond with an Israeli flag. And oftentimes like, I don't know what this response is really supposed to mean. And so for me, it was going through a process of explaining, right, that I myself took an oath as I got sworn in to serve the constituents of the Fifth and the American people. And that is really the only qualification and the only requirements I place on myself.
This is a blunt question and the last one on this topic. Are you anti-Semitic?
Absolutely not.
How do you feel about that?
So I'm going to try to keep my response clean, but she's lying. Just like right before the election, she claimed she doesn't support BDS. 3 weeks after she was elected, she supports BDS. She is a liar. She does not care about her Jewish constituents. She has an obsession with the state of Israel, while other atrocities are happening across the world. She never once speaks of China and the concentration camps that Muslims have been set up and living in there. However, she's been quiet lately because she's been called out so much for it. But we're expecting, since she re-won her congressional seat, she's going to start shortly again with Israel, walk it back. No, I didn't mean it. So apologize and say, no, I'm sorry to my Jewish constituents. That is not what I meant, which again is a lie.
I know some people did something. Remember that? That was what she said about September 11th. And this is what I don't think I get, that it's people, the American public. I don't know if it's because they don't really dig and they're not really exposed by the mainstream media to the complexity of what's going on here, that they don't really see all the truth. They see only a piece of what the truth is or what someone wants to present, but there's no actual investigation, there's no expose, or that the mainstream media is just afraid to expose it because they're afraid of not being PC enough. But I grew up in the Middle East. I mean, I'm not Jewish, but my father worked for Lockheed Martin. I grew up in Saudi Arabia. I was exposed to life in the kingdom under a Wahhabi rule where women were treated like less sometimes than the animal. I mean, seriously, there was nobody there to defend them. There was nobody there. If a woman was abused or something, this is a fact. I'm not making this up. I'm not trying to be critical. I loved the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia too for other things. I love the spices, the smells, the Red Sea, the culture. I love the Middle East.
I don't think anybody's going to argue with you that there's no gender equality in Saudi Arabia.
Right. But you never hear the women here in the United States, congressional leaders that have been given the great opportunity to become leaders in a nation, Muslim women standing up for the rights of Muslim women overseas, or the Muslim women in Afghanistan, or the Muslim women in Yemen, or the Muslim women anywhere, or women anywhere else other than here. It's very hush hush. No one ever even asks them really. And when they do, they don't answer. So this, I feel, is, Liora, and maybe it's, maybe you and I are on the same page, or maybe I'm not quite getting it. Why do you think it's like a different visual of the Muslim women, of the Muslim woman here than what we're seeing? I mean, is this combination of the left? Because, in Iran or anywhere else, somebody who's gay, we've talked about this before. And, Richard Grenell's been a very big advocate of this. If you're gay in Iran, my gosh, they will kill you if you go public. That we've seen that happen before. Rick Grenell, former, ambassador to Germany, head of DNI, has spoke out about this quite frequently. But we don't hear the Muslim leaders in the United States actively speaking out against this in their country. Why do you think that is? With so much freedom that we have here.
I don't know. Their sole obsession is with Israel. Israel, that for decades is a safe haven for the LGBTQ plus community. Israel, where the woman's role is not equal, but elevated to that of a man's in certain aspects of, let's say, political society or in the home. There's still work to be done, but when you look at a democracy like Israel and you look at its neighbors, you look like Iran, who a couple of years, I believe when Ahmadinejad was in power, he claimed they don't even have gays. So who knows, pictures sprout up all the time that they hang their gays. In Saudi Arabia, I believe it's still punishable by death, along with many other Muslim countries. There is no gender equality in any of these, in a lot of these Muslim countries, if any. So I'm not sure why none of this is ever spoken about. I think the role of these congresswomen here is so romanticized by the left and the progressive movements. They are oblivious to the realities of Muslim women in the Middle East, North Africa, and various other Muslim countries. I think that a lot of them, if you ask them to pinpoint where, all of these free Palestine, ask them where Israel and Palestine are. I'm assuming 75% of them will not even be able to point to it on a map. It's become this catchphrase. And when you ask them, well, what does that mean? Free Palestine? Like, are you talking about Gaza? Are you talking about Ramallah? Are you aware that Israel doesn't control Ramallah? They don't know how to answer. They call you a Nazi. They call you a racist. They call you a white colonizer. They call you an occupier.
Well, that's right. And I think that becomes the catch-all. That's when they have no argument, right? Is when you get accused. And you've seen that happen quite often, even with you, Liora. You've been battling this for years now. It's become even worse in recent years. And that's part of the reason why I have you on here. And before I let you go, I want to talk a little bit about what's happening in America with anti-Semitism. I keep telling this story every time I'm on the radio, regarding our project. Our campaign against hate. This story about a friend of mine who lives in Georgia. He was walking with his children. This was at the height of COVID when the lockdowns happened. And he was out in his neighborhood walking his dog with his two little kids. He's Orthodox. He just enjoying the day. Several other neighbors came over, little kids, and the 3 to 4-year-old little boy wants to pet his dog. And the older sibling says, "Don't touch the dog. They're Jewish. They have COVID." And he was like, "What? Like, where did this come from?"
I can tell you exactly where it came from.
Right. So that really hit my heart. When you told me this story, my heart was broken because I thought, wow, what a horrible thing for your children. I mean, he's a grown man, he can handle it. And he was like, very kind to the kids and explained why that was a complete lie. And then went and talked to their parents and really gave them a bit of a scolding because he knows that that's where he heard it from, the house, right? But, talking to his children about it, this kind of hate that spreads, and we're seeing it in both. We've seen it now in our Congress. We've just talked about that just a little bit. I think you and I have just skimmed the top of that. There's so much more there we could talk about. And in our country, what is it that people can do? How do we call it out? What do we do together to not only get to the truth, but to help stop this and advocate for something different?
I think the first thing that people need to do is stop politicizing anti-Semitism, whether they just don't want to admit its source, whether they just like to paint the other as the enemy. It's within our own Jewish communities. That's something that we yell from the top of our lungs, is stop politicizing anti-Semitism. I think that's the number one step, is to realize that it's not just coming from the right, and the violent threats and the murders from the right is horrific. Mm-hmm. We cannot ignore the threats coming from the opposite direction, where the BDS movement has infected numerous college campuses that leads to violence against Jewish students. It leads to Jewish students being forced out of universities. And then we can't ignore the policy threat.
Is it because they're teaching about apartheid? Is this type of
course.
They're trying to make it seem like a romantic, like you said? They
romanticize. Yes, First of all, they paint Israel as this white colonizing evil monster. They never mention that Israel's population is 55% Mizrahi and Sephardic Jews, which are people of black and brown color, something the social justice movement in America literally advocates for. They never say anything about the LGBTQ safe haven that's in Israel. They never mention any of it. We are the white colonizing force that rules America. It is, and again, it sounds so ridiculous to me because I know what a lie it is, but there are so many people, these young impressionable students, that are buying it up, and they're now labeling and categorizing good Jew versus bad Jew. A bad Jew on a college campus is somebody that's a Zionist, which is literally like 90+% of Jews in America, that they believe, Israel has a right to exist, just like every other country has a right to exist. We're labeled as bad Jews. The good Jew is the Max Berger, is the Simone Zimmerman, is, those self-loathing Jews that no, Israel has no right to exist. And all they do is vilify Israel. They do absolutely nothing to help promote Palestinian rights. They do nothing to help economic development. They do nothing, like you said, to promote women's rights in Gaza, any type of campaigns. Speaking of that, there was a woman featured in Israeli newspapers. She was celebrated. She's a mother of 5. She started a cab company, right? She's a businesswoman. Try to find this in the Arab media. Try to find this on Al Jazeera. Why isn't Congressman Ilhan Omar spoken about it? Why isn't
Rashida Tlaib?
Why isn't Rashida Tlaib? Rashida Tlaib is too busy complaining about Joe Biden's Secretary of State appointment, who's a Jew.
Right, exactly. But now she's on an anti-Semitism panel. This is crazy.
It's not.
I literally said it at the top of the show. I thought that it was an onion joke.
It's not.
I agree with the Jerusalem Post.
It's not an onion joke. And if we look at who is sponsoring this, it's Jewish Voices for Peace, which is a fraud front for a Jewish org. We captured a video. Their admins sit in Lebanon. I have a video of this. We try to post it all the time. And I always say this, they're as Jewish as an Easter egg. There's nothing Jewish about them. They weaponize anti-Semitism. And this is why Rashida's on there. This is why Mark Lamont Hill, Mr. Jews poison the water of Palestinians. This is why he's on there. They found that token Jew from the New York Times, Peter, to be on there. The 4th woman, I don't know if Linda Sarsour or Louis Farrakhan were not available, but they snuck this woman in. Nobody knows who she is. But when you look
Yeah, I
at
didn't know either. I was like,
nobody
who
knows.
is that? Who is that woman?
Nobody has any idea. I'm telling you, Linda was busy or something. So, and Louis Farrakhan is not feeling well. Who knows? But this is an absolute fraud. JVP is a fraud. And it's not an onion joke. And if it wasn't so pathetic and sad, it would be comical.
Well, this is the reason why the darkwire.com and stopantisemitism.org are getting together.
Yep.
And our nonprofits are really going to fight back on this. We're going to target the truth. We're going to get the truth out first and foremost, and really look at what's happening in our campuses, talk to mothers. Look, we welcome even Muslim moms, women in the United States, anyone that wants to be a part of this and say, look, we're speaking out against this. We're speaking up for human rights. That's what's important here. And to stop anti-Semitism. This is what is so important, is that we get the truth out, right, Liora? I mean, I think that's what we need to do.
Absolutely. And I think that we need to always remind people that it doesn't just stop with Jews. This is American civil liberties and our freedom, and what's at stake. It's always been said, what starts with Jews never ends with Jews.
And our freedom is eroding.
Right. So I think that like you said, we need as many allies as possible. We welcome everyone. And I think that this is going to ignite even more in 2021. And I think we need to keep this in the forefront of the news cycle.
I absolutely agree with you. Thank you so much, Liora, for being a part of this Sara Carter show.
Well,
You're amazing. I'm excited. I can't wait to work with you. We have so many projects, folks, so many things we want you to be involved in, and we'll keep you posted. Please go to our websites. Go to Leora's website, Liora Rez, at stopantisemitism.org. You need to go there. Don't let the left control the narrative. Look for yourself, read for yourself, understand what's happening here for yourself. Don't let them tell their lies. Don't let them spread their lies. Leora's telling the truth. And go to thedarkwire.com. Thank you, Liora.
Thank you.
So now you see why I had Liora Rez and why I'm joining her in a fight against anti-Semitism, and why I had her on this show. She's an important figure, somebody that I believe is willing to tell the truth, and not afraid of the backlash that she's going to get for telling it. And we need more people like her. We got to be willing to speak up. But before I go any further, I want to talk to you about something that's near and dear to my heart, and that is rescue animals and shelters. And you all know that I have this gorgeous cat named Barry. He's brought a lot of joy to my family. And Arm & Hammer now is launching a Purrectly Impurrfect campaign. And it's to help cats like Barry, usually overlooked shelter cats, find loving forever homes. And everyone knows the benefits of having an adopted cat. So from now until November 30th, shelters and cat lovers can nominate a Purrectly Impurrfect feline friend on felinegenerousstories.com. That's felinegenerousstories.com for official rules and to learn more. Don't forget, you can make a difference in an animal's life. Thanks, Arm & Hammer. I'm so glad that you were able to join me today on this show. Remember, it's up to every single one of us to fight against hate. We have to stand up to it. We have to speak out against it. And we can't be afraid to call it out. That means no matter who is out there, whether that's Rep. Ilhan Omar, whether that's the man living down the street, whether that's somebody in the university system that is teaching your child, inaccuracies about our allies in Israel, about places far away from home that may end up changing their perception right here on a national level. We have seen that over and over again. It's important that we call it out. It's important that we investigate it. And it's important that we not be afraid. Look, America's changing. America's different now because we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years that not everybody is who they claim to be. And particularly in Washington, D.C., we've seen a bureaucracy that has grabbed hold of this nation and has taken the blindfolds off Lady Justice. It's been hard on a lot of us. We've seen what's happened during this election, but more importantly, we've seen the divisions in our country, not just politically, but racially. And and also over religion. We've seen these divisions kind of permeate our society. It's really difficult. It's hard for all of us. It's hard for me. We want to teach our children to love America, to put America first, and to love one another, because in the end, we are all Americans. We're not Jewish, Christian, Muslim. We're not all the things that make us different, but we're all the things that make us alike, right? We all came here for one reason. So don't let the people that want to divide us any longer. Stand up to it, expose it, say you're not going to take it anymore. And thank you so much for being a part of the Sara Carter Show. It means so much to me. It means so much to everyone that I know who's on the same team, fighting for the same freedom and dignity for Americans and really for people all over the world, so that we have a nation that they can come to. And remember, when you listen to the Sara Carter Show, the podcast, please, on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcast, give us a 5-star rating and write us a review. And I'd love to read your reviews. I love to answer them. So believe me, I go on and I read them myself. Thank you so much. Thanks again for following me and visiting my stories at saracarter.com, where you'll even find more about our platforms. And remember, join us at our campaign against hate at thedarkwire.com. Also, you can follow Liora Rez at stopantisemitism.org. That's stopantisemitism.org. We're working together, and we've got a lot more coming in the future.